Assalamualaikum and a very good day to venues. So my name is Abdul Rahman bin Suhaimi as the presenter, and for my supervisor is Dr. Muhammad Hafizal bin Hanifah. So today I'm going to present about my bachelor degree project, which is the title is Aluminium Plastic Rubber Barrier, which is APRB as door flood prevention. So moving to the next slide. Okay, for this slide, we will have the content. So the first one, which is the introduction, and then followed by the literature review, and then we have chapter 3, which is methodology, and finally we have chapter 4, which is the data analysis and discussion. Okay, moving to the next slide. So this is the chapter 1, which is the introduction. Okay, for this slide we have 1.1, which is background of the study. So as we know that our country is rapidly growing in economy and advanced technology, so activities such as deforestation, open burning and exploitation of minerals will be carried out. So as you can see in the right side of the slide, it states that the state budget division obtains an average value that differ from 35% to 70% depending on the value of the wood. So it means that there will be more logging activity being carried out to make a profit. So because of that, there will be several natural disasters happen, such as landslide, hurricane, flood, and flash flood. So moving to the next slide. Okay, for this slide we have the natural event, which is ice melt at North Pole, flash flood that hit cities, and disturbing sea level rise. So in the left side of the slide, you can see it states that the average sea level increased about 10 centimeter by 2030 and about 50 centimeter by the end of 21st century. So in Malaysia, we have Jabatan Pengairan and Saluran, which is JPS, and we also have Nation Flood Hazard Management Program. So moving to the next slide. Okay, as you can see in the right side of this slide, it shows the system that being done by JPS. So the example is river improvement, embankment, tidal gates, drainage improvement, dams, and leak. So moving to the next slide. So in this slide, we will have 1.2, which is problem statement. So as we know, flood will cause damage to our property and also cause the damage or injured and death to local residents. So our state will spend billions to recover in total. So for blood protection, there are several problems, which is like it takes times to install the flood barrier and also too complicated for people to install the flood barrier. So we have the suggestion, which is we offer aluminium plastic rubber barrier as the solution for this problem. So moving to the next slide. So in this slide we will have 1.3, which is research objective, and 1.4 significant study. So for research objective we have 2 points, which is to produce proof of concept for door flood prevention by using low cost material that we suggest is aluminium, plastic and rubber. And the second one is to determine 3-point fractural strength by using software simulation. And for significant study is to help solve problems that arise when flood occurs and to help local people to have a flood prevention product to solve the problem of flood at affordable price. So moving to the next slide. So we have 1.5, which is the scope of work. So in this research, it's only cover the door part for the house, and the material scope is close to aluminium, plastic and rubber. And for the testing, we have hydrostatic test and leakage test. Okay, for 1.6, which is summary, flood phenomenon often occurs in Malaysia and inhabit industrial, commercial, agricultural, educational and residential areas. So some initiatives are taken by Jabatan Pengairan dan Saluran, which is JPS, to curb this problem. However, the creation of a flood barrier on the door for a house is a new initiative in preventing flood from entering the house. Okay, we have chapter 2, which is literature review. Moving to the next slide. So this is 2.1, which is the introduction. So in Malaysia we have two types of flood, which is flash flood and monsoon flood. So this is because of our forest extinction. There is several causes to that, which is construction of dams, logging, tin mining, and so on. But logging is the biggest factor that caused our forest to extinction. So flood incident will be a cause of effective flood prevention. Okay, for 2.2, which is flood disaster, we have affecting dangers pattern. So it states to 3 point, which is uncontrolled building construction, unplanned rapid placement, and exceeds land use. So moving to the next. So in this slide, we have 2.3, which is flood barrier concept. So this is an important part to create the flood barrier. So we have the criteria. So the first one is stability, followed by cost, installation time, safety, reusable, and flexibility. So moving to the next slide. So in this slide we have 2.4, which is flood barrier material, and 2.5 flood barrier design. So for flood barrier material, we have the major material that being studied in recent studies, which is plastic and rubber. And for the type of the material that they use is plastic grade, polypropylene, and polyethylene. And for flood barrier design, there are several types of barrier, which is air-filled tube, water-filled tube, impermeability filled container, rigid freestand, rigid frame barrier, and we also have defensile, and so on. Okay, moving to the next slide. So this is 2.6, which is flood barrier testing. So in recent studies, they use two tests, which is hydrostatic test and leakage test, as the major tests that been done. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay, so this is 2.7, which is software. So they use several software to create, design, and analysis the prototype for the flood barrier. So they use Cement NX, MATLAB, and AutoCAD. So moving to the next slide. So this is chapter 3, which is methodology. Okay, we have 3.1, which is introduction, the flow chart for our studies. So we will start with problem statement and literature review, and then design the concept, and then choose the raw material, which is aluminium, plastic, and rubber. And then we will have material preparation, product design, product testing, and then if the product is failed, we will back to the material preparation to see which is whether the material or the design is the problems. And then if we have a positive result, we will follow to the analysis data, and then we will have discussion and the conclusion. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay, in this slide we have 3.2, which is design prototype. So if you can see in the left side of this slide, we have proposed design prototype. So that is the design that we create. And then in the right side, we have the testing, which is hydrostatic test and leakage test that we will do for our prototype. So this is 3.3, which is data collection. So we will have analytical calculation table. So as you can see in this slide, we have two graph, which is the example of hydrostatic and leakage graph. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay, so this is chapter 4, which is the last chapter for our PSM1. So the title is Data Analysis and Discussion. So for expected result, for hydrostatic test that we will use for our prototype, so we expect that it will have the positive result, which is the prototype able to withstand the load of water applied, and it doesn't show any damage to the prototype. And then the second test, which is the minor test, we will use is leakage test. And then we also expect that this test will have a positive result, which is there is no water that will pass the prototype flood barrier. So moving. Okay, so that's all from me. Thank you.